Hey everyone, welcome to the Get Your Life Together Girl podcast, the ultimate blueprint to self-love and inner peace. I'm your host, Danielle Van. As a cognitive behavioral therapist, a life coach to women, meditation teacher, and author, I've spent my life studying and learning from the stories that make us human. It's my passion and goal to help you shift your mindset and create a lifelong revolution to help you reach your greatest potential. We all have emotions for a reason. They're there to tell us something. Ignoring those feelings will never make them go away. In fact, they're going to eventually surface, and if you wait too long before addressing them, it's likely that you'll find yourself flooded with a sudden sense of dread, overwhelm, and a mountain of emotions that you're not sure what to do with. By processing them as they come up, you allow yourself to find a healthier mindset and keep that all-consuming feeling of overwhelm at bay. Today, you and I are taking a one-on-one deep dive into overwhelm and the dreaded experience of forecasting. This is something that often comes up during the holiday season, and we're going to put a stop to it right now. So let's dive right in. The Get Your Life Together Girl podcast starts right now. The holiday season is here. Some people hear the sound of Christmas and holiday music and literally want to scream. It's not the most joyful time for them. In fact, it is the most stressful and anxious time for them. And when I am sitting in private session, a lot of people will say, I swear I feel like there's this low hum going off in my head. Like there's this constant feeling that the alarm is going to go off, and yet I'm awake and I'm waiting for myself to jump whenever it goes off. For others, they feel like their shoulders are tight or they're sitting an inch higher up towards their ears. They're trying to relax. And if this is something that you can relate to, and a lot of people can, there's a really good chance that you are dealing with anxiety. It's one of those things that the more we take on, the greater we feel that we cannot handle the things that are happening around us and to us. It's that overwhelming feeling that everything is above our heads. And to be honest with you, the complexity of the world we're living in a time where financial concerns are a big deal, where emotional concerns are a big deal, war, politics, family life, all of the complexities of our minds, it becomes a space where we feel like we cannot operate. When we find ourselves in overwhelm, or we find that we have cognitive impact, meaning the mindset is impacted, our behavior is impacted, there are a few ways that we can identify that we're feeling that way, other than I just feel stressed or I just feel anxious. And then we're going to talk about why we're talking about this today, period. Right? But let's talk about what it feels like to feel overwhelmed, right? So it's usually engaging in more negative thoughts, feelings, and conversations than we normally would, right? When we're overwhelmed, we are really leaning into those negatives. We're feeling them. And we can also even feel this rise of anger and frustration. Fear normally finds its way into the door. We normally have a sensation of mental slowness, forgetfulness, confusion, difficulty concentrating or logical thinking. Your mind is racing. You're impaired and not able to really get down to just the facts of any situation, of any problem. You really cannot even identify that there's a problem to begin with. And you can even get into a space where you are so fatigued by the emotional and mental kind of undoing that's happening that the body physically becomes prone to, illness and to migraines, to feeling just overall that blah feeling. That's often what I hear. I'm like, how are you? Well, I just feel blah. Well, we might be overwhelmed. And so we have to pinpoint our primary source of overwhelm. And I said, let me tell you about why we're talking about this. So over the last few weeks, session after session, there have been so many people talking about One, the financial aspect of the holiday season, with it being so demanding in a time where everything is rising in cost, where financially we are not increasing our livelihoods, but everything around us is increasing and it's hard to keep up. It's also talking about the demands of being in all the places, doing all the things, baking the cookies, being at the programs for the kids, making sure that the tree is set up, and then the other holiday traditions are met no matter what religion or things that you practice. It's this space where we are standing in quicksand and we really can't feel like we can catch our breath. It's a terrible feeling, right? It really is a terrible feeling. And it's so easy to get into that space of being consumed by fear and emotion. I want to remind you that your mind is one of the most powerful assets that you have, right? And I want you to remember that overwhelmed is a connection. It is a thought process. It is a space where you have locked in to something and said, I am going to own this as my own, and I'm going to dwell on this in hopes that the thought process that I am leaning into will create change. I have personally never sat in an experience and thought it to death, nor have I ever been with anyone who's ever done it and was able to create change by simply becoming overwhelmed by the moment, by thinking the moment to death, by dwelling on these things. And unless you have, I don't think it's even possible. We begin to really become cognitively impacted, and we struggle to get into a space that makes sense for us. We become so less effective in our thoughts and our feelings and our actions. And so let's really get into a space knowing that this time of year is going to naturally be busier. This time of year, whether you're celebrating the holidays or you are just getting ready for the next year to soon begin, we will find this increase of doing. There's increased demands. There's increased feelings. There's increased thoughts. There's increased everything. And instead of getting into a space where we are just dealing, where we're trying to survive the moment, let's start getting into a space where we pinpoint our primary sources of overwhelm, and then we use our tools in order to best support ourselves. How about that? Right? Now, will you screw this up? Yes, you will. You will. I do. I do it all the time. No matter how many skills that you have, you're still going to get into a space where we get into thinking bigger, doing more, and renegotiating what's important to us and putting those things off to the side in order to meet the moment. And no matter what overwhelm looks like for you, I want you to know that it is a cycle that you have the power to change, right? So let's get into how we do that. And I want to get into the understanding of first what overwhelm is. That, we've already talked about the feeling part of it, but what is the actual definition of it? And let's talk about forecasting, because both of those things are so important to know. And then let's get into the how to break this. I want you to be able to enjoy this end of year process, this holiday season, this time of growth, change, shutdown, and renewal, and be able to get into a space where we're excited about what is and what is to come. That's really what we want to focus on. Instead of getting into the space of lack and negativity, we want to get into the space of excitement and joy and channeling these feelings that are not distractive, but instead enhancing. So overwhelm is this feeling where we feel buried or drowning under something. So that could be a thought, a feeling, an experience. Another word that you can put in place of overwhelm is submerged, or even use engulfed, right? This feeling of sometimes defeat or giving too much to something. inundated by the experience, right? So sometimes I'll hear people say, I'm overwhelmed by the emotions. So I'm being inundated by the experience of my emotions, or I'm overran or flooded or swamped, right? Again, under something. Or another definition is to have a strong emotional impact. So again, this stirring, this movement that is too big on the onset. Or another way to look at it is it's too strong or overpowering. This is overwhelm. When it comes to therapeutic understanding of overwhelm, we really look at it as a state of being that is set off by an intense emotion that is difficult to manage. It again affects your ability to act and think rationally, and it also prevents you from performing the experiences and things that you normally do on a day-to-day basis. It can be this extreme level of stress, and it's a space where we struggle to find a solution out. Now let's talk about forecasting, and I've given this example before, but maybe you're not a regular listener here or you missed it. So I want to give it to you again because this is the easiest way for you to visualize forecasting. And it is that you are the weatherman or weatherwoman, and you are really trying to predict what is going to come up. You're trying to plan for whatever may be, whatever the conditions may be. Forecasting really refers to predicting how you think something will play out, how you're going to feel in the future, or you're trying to look for ways to keep yourself safe by managing your expectations, looking for the good, or even pushing past the worst. So when we talk about forecasting, it's actually not a terrible thing, but what it can do is lead us deeper into overwhelm and deeper into anxiety. And when we talk about anxiety, I want you to really know it is the act of forecasting. We're trying to create a playbook, the rules of engagement, without having all of the evidence surrounding a certain experience. So we see this a lot during the holidays, right? Like we build in our mind, so-and-so is going to say this and they're going to do this and it's going to piss you off, right? And we think about all of the things that may occur. This is forecasting. When we get into a state of forecasting, we're not living in truth. We're not living in the moment. We're creating more stress, more anxiety, more overwhelm. And we tend to bring our mindset down because we're trying to figure out what may come into our awareness. And we have to stop it right now. So let's talk about ways to get out of the overwhelm. Let's give some thought processes and some real true ways and behaviors to change the anxiety that you may be feeling as we move into this beautiful time. Now, normally I give you kind of this step-by-step process. And overwhelm is so individual. It is so tailored to our personal experience and how we process our emotions that a step-by-step doesn't really hit home here. So I'm going to give you a bunch of different tools, thought processes, and practices that you can put in place right now. And they will range from pretty simple to pretty involved, to where you have to be very focused and mindful about them. So the first one is very simple. It's a thought process. And it really is to ask yourself, is this necessary? Think about overwhelm. Think about what you find yourself stressed out about. Is what you're experiencing necessary? Have you taken on something that actually doesn't belong to you? Have you taken on every feeling of a moment? Have you gotten into a space where you are dealing with creating more plans or just doing more than you have capacity for? So normal during the holidays, right? Like all of the packages and the parties and all the things that we were talking about just a minute ago. So ask yourself, is this necessary? Is what I'm stressed about actually necessary? Because if it's not, what can you do to tailor it back? And if you're able to tailor it back, will you be able to get yourself out of the negative cycle? can you then create change? So that's very, very important. Is what I'm stressed about necessary? And if it is, you take it to the next level. And that's where you break down the moment. Break it down. How many things are involved in this yes, in this doing? If there's 20 things, I want you to get a piece of paper and write all 20 down and decide what is the number one thing that you can do right now that's going to provide that dopamine hit, that motivation, that yes feeling to keep you going and satisfied? Or what's the one thing that you can take out of the equation that will lessen the stress? When we look at a situation from a global understanding, meaning every detail, we easily and quickly get into a space of stress. So break it down. I actually call this the one focus mindset. One task at a time, one emotion at a time, one whatever it is that you're dealing with at the time. When your thoughts run wild, you're going to bring yourself into that state of forecasting, anxiety, and stress. So one focus makes us stop and be present. That way we can slow everything down. This is perfect during the holidays, but it's really perfect anytime. Begin to practice that one focus mindset. I actually move through my day as intentionally as possible with this idea in mind. Of course, that doesn't always happen. I can find myself scrolling on Instagram or TikTok just like everyone else. But if we stay focused in this one focus mindset, we actually keep ourselves from going downhill in our mindset. So what can you do one thing at a time? Now, another tool, and I love this, and I tell people this all the time when we're talking about this negative cycle of thought, and especially the negative inner voice, and it's called the stop method. This is so excellent when it comes to anxiety, and it's excellent when we're talking about forecasting, trying to play out what's going to happen at the dinner table, what's going to happen when you don't buy the perfect gift, whatever it might be. So let's talk about what STOP actually stands for, and then I'll tell you how to use it. STOP stands for stop and interpret. That's the S. T is take a breath. O is observe, and P is proceed. So let's talk about that. So if we tell ourselves in a moment where we're feeling stress or anxiety, or our thoughts are running away from us, or we're feeling this rise of pinching our shoulders up towards our ears, our hands are shaking, our breath is really shaky at the moment, we have to tell ourselves stop. We're going to interrupt the thought and the emotion that is happening. So just stop. I will often tell people, literally say it out loud so that the verbal cue meets your brain and your brain says, oops, we need to redirect. Okay, so I want you to just say it if you need to. Stop. We're going to interrupt the thoughts and the emotions. Then we're going to take a breath, right? We're going to reset that nervous system with our only natural way to do so. And we're going to allow it to fill our body. We're just going to take that good deep inhale through your nose, letting it come all the way down to your diaphragm, letting yourself hold it for just a second, and then slowly, and I do mean slowly, exhaling through your nose. This is the way we tell the brain that we are safe and that we have the power to reset what is happening. So stop, again, interrupt. T, take a breath, and we're going to next use the O, which is to observe. Become more aware of what's happening, not only mentally and emotionally, but what's happening inside and outside. Is there some kind of stimulus that's making you feel overwhelmed? Is it that somebody is frantically moving through your space? Is it that your phone keeps dinging, or your emails are piled up, or that you financially are struggling, and that is what's kind of in the background of your mind? I want you to observe, because you do not have the power to fix anything that you are not completely aware of, right? So stop, observe, and really take a moment to know what is happening right now. The other piece of this, when you observe what you're feeling, thinking, and doing, you actually have the power to redirect it. Once you know how you're going to redirect yourself, then we can use the P, which means to proceed. But I only want you proceeding when you are in a space that you have brought yourself back into center. And does that mean you have to be completely calm? No. If you're overwhelmed, there's still going to be this background noise of tension. I'm not saying make no other moves until you are completely calm and centered. What I'm saying is frantic thoughts lead to frantic action. Frantic anxiety leads to mistakes. So be careful with what you're doing and how you're showing up and what decisions you're making through that mindset. Go back to that one focus mindset. But if you can just get yourself into a space that you know, okay, I may not be at 100%, but I'm at 80, then we proceed. The next space that you can really take yourself into or practice individually is asking a single question, and it comes back to our safety like pretty much everything does. But the question is, what can I control right now? This question is so powerful in breaking anxiety. What can I control? What can I let go of trying to figure out? What evidence, what information do I have? And how can I use it to my benefit? When we're dealing with the unknown, we try, like we've been talking about, to forecast. What will this look like? How can I change all of this right now? And we become overwhelmed. But you ask yourself, can I control this moment? Can I control this thing? Where is the space that I have safety? Where is the space that I do have control? If I can't control the schedule of the day, how can I meet the schedule feeling in control, feeling safe that I have the power to meet exactly all the demands and all the needs that are being asked of me? This is one of the harder tools, practices to really use in the time that you're stressed. And it does take time to really lock in, to practice it and become something that you quickly assess and use, to be honest with you. But what can I control? Can I control this moment? Can I control how I feel? How can I control it? What's within my control? This is such a powerful tool. I hope that you'll use it because you can really get into a space that you are not then trying to manage the entire moment, but instead you begin to manage how you show up to said moment. Okay, so that's a big one. What can I control? The next thing is when you feel emotionally overwhelmed or anxious, you have to continue to listen, have inner conversations, and then express your emotions in order to deal with said emotions. When we have a lot going on, when the holidays are here, when we're feeling that we are taxed to our max, we have to be able to get into that expression of the self. You must express your emotions. Remember that emotions are not facts, right? Because your definitions and my definitions are different. But they are fact to you at the time that you're feeling them, which is a bit confusing. They're not facts, but yet I factually feel this. And so therefore we have to get into that. What does this mean to me? How can I use this to my benefit? Is this something that I even need to feel? But if you're feeling it, you need to actually process through it. Now, here's the biggest thing. Your emotions, this impulse, this rise, I'll give you an example in just a moment, is easily broken with a bit of intentionality. Okay, so your thoughts come in, they have absolutely no meaning to them whatsoever, and you are the one who puts meaning to it by validating or rejecting, and certainly by the rise of the emotion to meet the moment. So again, you've heard me talk about being ravenously hungry and then you reject it and it doesn't mean anything to you, or you buy into it and say, yep, I am. But let's go a little deeper here. Let's talk about the feeling of needing to make everyone feel extra special during the holidays. And so you buy all the things. And in all the things, you actually are putting yourself into deep debt. That thought process begins to own you. and we really struggle to get out of the emotional rise. Now, here's the part. The thought comes in, I'm going to buy all the things. The emotion rises to meet it, but you're going to get in debt. And that brings fear to the surface. And then you take action from those two things, right? The action may just be another thought. Remember that. But as that emotion rises, that fear sets in, you begin to tank. If you would just sit in that emotion for less than 90 seconds, a minute and a half, that feeling will dissipate. And you do not have to get into the thought spiral of the next action. Again, the next thought. So I want to buy all the things. Emotional body rises, but that's going to put you in debt and you don't have the extra money right now. Okay, I'm going to sit in this. I'm going to sit in this fear of what is it going to look like if I do, and what is it going to look like if I don't? And let that process, and then decide on the next action. This is how we take ourselves out of that overwhelm. This is how we take ourselves out of that anxiety. Stop it, sit in it. Your emotions only last for about 90 seconds. The problem is we choose the next action, which is another thought, and we keep the cycle going. We want to step out of that. Now let's move on. The next two are kind of connected. And the first is to name your distractions. This is a hard one for a lot of people, right? What is happening in your current environment in the holiday season or any other time that allows you to be bombarded? Give yourself like 30 minutes in the morning, unrushed, and 30 minutes at night to name the distraction and begin to look at, is this something that I can let go of? And if it is, then we know we have to really be more specific with our yeses and our nos. The truth is, you can't do everything. No matter how hard you try, you cannot do everything. You cannot give all of you. You can't do all the things. You can't worry yourself to death. And so what can I stop doing, or what can I start doing within a limit that allows me to know the distraction and not be overwhelmed by saying no, by saying yes? Yes to you, no to someone else. Yes to feeling the slowdown versus yes to being bombarded. What can you do? Name the distraction, name the problem. Then the thought process comes in. How can I control this? These all have moments where we can loop each tool together, and this is a great one to start with. Now, the next thing that you can do to stop it is called time boxing. This is where you set boundaries on your time and your workload. Workload not necessarily meaning in your job, but just period. What is on your task list? What projects are you doing? What things are you in charge of? When we time block, these are the hours that you spend doing said projects. And that also gives you a space to create a schedule, right? So what time do you arrive at the office? What time are you leaving? Saying yes or no to specific things. Again, going back to the distraction piece. Setting this up allows you to get out of this escalation of things and more specific about what you can handle. This creates more breathing room for you, which allows you to have all of your priorities met with fewer distractions, and it gives you downtime. I know for me, I struggle with downtime. There are so many different things that I am doing and have my hands in that downtime is more of a luxury sometimes than a priority. And yet I use time boxing to help myself say no when the overwhelm begins to, pile up. So think about this. What can you time box? From said time to said time, I'm doing this. The next 3 hours after that, I'm doing this. And in that time boxing, you schedule in downtime. This is so important. It's so necessary. And it really leads us into even the next piece, which is understanding where you are and planning from there. When we are overwhelmed, we try to put this beautiful blanket picture of all of the things in front of us and say, yep, I can do it. absolutely, I will do all the things. And then you get halfway through the day and you've only made it, to one or two on the list. And you are literally mentally and emotionally freaking out because you know it's not possible to do all the things. Accepting where you are allows you to plan from where you are. And this is important, especially when you're experiencing anxiety. If you know that my capacity is limited because of how I'm feeling, that also means that I have to be so specific with how I move through the next moments. I don't want to pile more on. I don't want to create more discomfort and disease within me. Instead, I want to definitely bring it down and know that I can start where I am, even if it's from a highly emotional place, and do the damn thing so that I can really help myself in the long run. So understand, you have the power to start where you are, no matter what that looks like, and do what you need. And then it leads us into the next thing that is so common when we're talking about stress, when we're talking about anxiety, okay? And that is challenging your perfectionism. Perfectionism can lead you into taking the simpler task, these simple pieces of the holidays, and making them bigger than they need to be. And that can lead you into distress, higher levels of stress, higher levels of anxiety. As things pile up, the sense of overwhelming doom, this overwhelm grows, and that leads you into feeling less than and needing to get to a place of being good enough. It really is an oxymoron. It's better to have something done than to have it done perfectly, because perfect is a frame of mind that most of us will never reach. So I want you to think about that. What is really important? Is done better than perfect? What is the marginal benefit of spending so much time on this particular thing versus if I did it and I also did X, Y, and Z, and then I felt more accomplished? So challenge your perfectionism. What is most important here, and what does good enough look like? It's a hard place to start. It's a hard place to be, but you must challenge your perfectionism in order to get out of the space of overwhelm. The next thing that you can do is to challenge your assumptions. If you're feeling overwhelmed, there's a lot going on and you are struggling, a lot of times we get into a space that we call stuck. Stuck is an unproductive behavior, is an unproductive thought process. A lot of times when we have all the things happening, we often will tell ourselves, if something falls through the cracks, I'd fail and I'm never going to be able to be good enough for it. Or if I have this happen, I'm never going to recover. And we put so much demand. It's really impossible to meet all the things. It's also impossible to know how someone else is going to show up. So this is another piece that happens, right, where we have to challenge the assumptions. I know that I was in session this past week and someone was saying, I don't know how the grandparents are going to respond to this and that. And it makes me nervous to go to Thanksgiving. And I walk them through this space that's like, challenge your assumptions. You don't know how they're going to show up. You don't know what their response is. You don't even know that what you're worried about is even going to come up. So are you sure you need to spend so much mental time and thought process around trying to figure out what to say and how it's going to look and what you need to do and all the things when you haven't even met the moment? Again, goes back to forecasting. Be sure that you're not spending a bunch of time creating problems that don't even exist. Remember, I call this borrowing trouble. These are all really beautiful ways, practices, thought practices, emotional practices, tools to get ourselves out of a space of holiday, of just normal overwhelm. I'm going to throw out some other ones without giving you a deeper understanding of them, because you can find all of these practices and tools scattered throughout all of the podcast, and especially in the Mindset Reset. So Think about your stress and emotional regulation. How can you best meet the emotional overload? Can you name your emotions? Can you journal about it? Can you write about it? Can you ground yourself? What is your grounding technique, whether that is box breathing or meditation or stretching or exercise or just getting quiet or listening to music or whatever it might be? You can prioritize your self-care. You can seek help, right? Get with somebody like myself and help yourself know that you have the power to change and reduce the anxiety and overwhelm that you're feeling. Move your body. That's a big one, right? It is a great reset, just like your breath. Be positively selfish at least once during the day, okay? That sounds weird, but think of the small practices as a reset button. What's the one thing that you can say, this is mine, and nothing and no one is going to get in the way of me doing it? For me, it's meditation in the morning, right? And everyone in my family knows, do not come into my meditation space or else, right? Be positively selfish. If you are one that has anxiety, you do need to practice something that helps you self-soothe at least once a day. Identify what nurtures you, what provides comfort, what gives you a sense of contentment and peace, and do it, right? Be selfish in that way. Embrace your inner child. Play, right? Play a little bit. Feel like you have a sense of joy and connectivity to your life. So what can you do that makes you feel like there's some fun, that there's some joy, that there is a break from all this heaviness that is weighing you down? Reach out to the people that you care about. Think about your relationship with social media. Are you spending time engaging in things that are not supporting you? You can use social media as a therapeutic support guide, right? Fueling your way into better mental health and fueling your way out of anxiety by following people who are targeted in creating a healthier space. You can prioritize sleep. This is a big one. Of course, your anxiety is going to get worse if you are running on very little physical reset. That's what your sleep is there to do. And lastly, schedule what is most important and let go of what isn't. It all sounds easier said than done, but actually, if you focus, it is easier, right? So do it. The bottom line is, feeling overwhelmed is natural, especially when there is so much extra when it's this time of the year. You have to find a way to manage the stress, give yourself a set of boundaries, and really get into a space that you know that you have the power to change your relationship to anything at any time. And in the time of the holiday season, it's really necessary to slow down and know that you can serve yourself and those around you by doing what best builds you up, what best makes you feel connected, what best moves all of the things into memories, okay? In good, positive memories. So how can you serve yourself this holiday season? How can you let go of the forecasting, the stress, the anxiety, and how can you make this space one that is healthy and productive? That's the task. And when you do that, you really have created the essential step into getting your life together. Thank you so much for listening to the Get Your Life Together Girl podcast. If you're seeking daily inspiration and more tips and tools, follow me on social media if you're not already at Get Your Life Together Girl on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Clapper, and Threads. You can also visit my show notes, my blog, and a merch shop on my website at getyourlifetogethergirl.com. There are many tools and tips to help you be more mindful right now. Thank you for being a valuable member of this community. Until next time, be kind to yourself and others.